Alright, so I need to talk you through something that's been on my mind for a few days now, because the deeper I dig into this Cleveland situation, the more I'm convinced this isn't just another throwaway off-season storyline. This is the kind of development that quietly decides whether a franchise actually moves forward or spends another year spinning its wheels in the same place it's been stuck for what feels like forever. And what's wild is how quiet all of it has been. No press conference. No dramatic soundbite blowing up your timeline. This is happening in roster construction, in depth chart math, in the kind of behind-the-scenes decision-making front offices make assuming nobody's paying close enough attention to catch it. Well, I caught it. And once I walk you through everything I found, I don't think you're going to look at this Browns roster the same way again. There are really two separate threads pulling at this team right now, and honestly, they couldn't be more opposite in tone if you tried to write them that way on purpose. One of them is heavy. It's the kind of storyline that makes you confront an uncomfortable reality about a young quarterback whose window in Cleveland might be closing faster than anybody expected 12 months ago. The other one is the exact opposite. The kind of story that reminds you why this defense used to make opposing offenses nervous before the ball was even snapped. I'm going to walk you through both, slowly, because there's real substance buried in here that a quick headline scroll just cannot capture. Let's rip the Band-Aid off first, because I always think it's better to deal with the hard part before we get to the good stuff. I'm talking about Dillon Gabriel, and whether his time wearing a Browns uniform is already closer to the finish line than most people want to admit. Here's where things actually sit right now, and I need you to really absorb this instead of just skimming past it. Several credible national voices are now treating a Gabriel trade as something a lot closer to inevitable than hypothetical. This isn't some fan base overreacting out of frustration. This is a cold, roster-driven conclusion, and when you sit down and actually run the math yourself, it becomes genuinely hard to argue against it, no matter how much you might want to defend the kid. Take yourself back to last year's draft for a second. Cleveland walked out of that weekend having taken 2 rookie quarterbacks. Gabriel came off the board in the 3rd round, a pick that raised more than a few eyebrows at the time because plenty of evaluators felt like the front office was reaching, spending real capital on a steady, low-ceiling game manager instead of chasing a guy with actual upside. Then, almost like ownership was quietly hedging its own bet in real time, they turned right back around later in that same draft and grabbed Sanders in round 5. In the moment, it looked almost chaotic. 2 quarterbacks, 2 totally different player profiles, and not a single clear signal about which direction this front office actually wanted to go. Now fast forward through a full season, and suddenly none of it feels murky anymore. It feels almost brutally obvious. Gabriel got his opportunity. 6 starts as a rookie, thrown right into live fire, expected to prove to both his coaching staff and a restless fan base that he was the long-term answer under center. And I'm not here to drag him through the mud, because to his credit, he didn't turn the ball over at an alarming rate and didn't completely fold once the pressure ramped up. But here's the uncomfortable part nobody really wants to say out loud, so I'll say it myself. There's a massive gap between managing a football game and actually winning one. Gabriel's offense never really had teeth. The ball rarely traveled downfield with confidence. Explosive plays were basically a myth. Watching him operate never once felt like watching a franchise quarterback seize control of a game. It felt more like watching a guy trying not to lose, instead of a guy trying to win. And that distinction matters a lot more than people give it credit for, because it tells you exactly what kind of ceiling you're actually working with. Meanwhile, on the complete other end of that quarterback room, something totally different has been brewing. Sanders has become the name everybody inside that building keeps circling back to. Is he polished right now? Not even close. He's still raw in more areas than not. But the flashes he's shown are exactly the kind that make evaluators stop mid-sentence and lean in closer. There's a ceiling attached to Sanders that simply doesn't exist with Gabriel. And around this league, that gap in upside gets treated like gospel. Franchises don't build around cautious game managers. They build around quarterbacks who can manufacture something out of nothing when a play completely breaks down. And right now, inside that Cleveland building, that guy is Sanders, not Gabriel. And just when you thought that room couldn't get any more crowded, the Browns went ahead and added yet another arm into the mix during this most recent draft. Dillon Gabriel, a developmental prospect out of Arkansas, taken in the 6th round. Nobody's walking into camp expecting him to compete for real snaps this year, and honestly, that's not even the point of the pick. The point is pure upside. Teams fall head over heels for developmental arms with elite physical traits, and Green checks every single one of those boxes. He's exactly the kind of player a franchise quietly tucks away, protects, coaches up behind closed doors, and hopes turns into something special 2 or 3 years down the road. So let's run the math together, because this is exactly where the real problem takes shape. Cleveland currently has 4 quarterbacks sitting on this roster: Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel, Dillon Gabriel. 4 names competing for what realistically amounts to 3 roster spots once final cuts come down. Strip away every ounce of emotional attachment and look at this the exact way a front office would, and one name starts sticking out as the odd man out, and it honestly isn't close. Watson isn't going anywhere. And yeah, I know that frustrates a big chunk of this fan base, myself included, whenever I sit down and actually think through the contract math involved. But the financial reality makes moving him next to impossible right now, whether people want to accept that or not. Sanders, meanwhile, appears locked in a legitimate, real competition with Watson for the starting job heading into camp, and just sit with what that alone is telling you. A franchise does not let a second-year quarterback push its established veteran for the starting job unless that coaching staff genuinely believes in what they've been watching behind closed doors. That's not manufactured hype for headlines. That's belief earned rep by rep on the practice field. Then there's Green, the newest addition, the developmental project nobody in that building is willing to give up on before they've even had a real chance to coach him. So where exactly does that leave Gabriel? Realistically, 3rd string, at best. And if you zoom out even further, the picture gets murkier still, because there's already chatter floating around that Cleveland could be preparing to attack the quarterback position again in the 2027 draft, a class already being talked about as one of the deepest we've seen in years. Unless whoever starts this coming season delivers an absolute career year, this front office could very easily be right back in that quarterback market next spring, still hunting for its true long-term centerpiece. And if that's genuinely the direction ownership is already leaning, then holding on to Gabriel simply stops making sense on paper. He's still on his rookie contract, which actually makes him fairly attractive trade bait for another team looking for cheap, experienced depth at the position. He's proven he can protect the football. He's proven he can operate an NFL huddle without completely unraveling under pressure. Somewhere out there, a franchise dealing with real instability at quarterback is going to look at Gabriel's tape and see exactly what they need: a low-risk, low-cost insurance option who already has legitimate game experience under his belt. From Cleveland's side of the table, this stops feeling like a football decision and starts feeling like a straightforward business calculation. If another team calls with even a modest late-round pick attached, letting Gabriel walk while his trade value is still intact might genuinely be the smarter move, rather than watching him rot on the bench with zero realistic path to meaningful snaps. And here's the part that really drives home how serious this has gotten. This isn't just one analyst floating a hot take to farm clicks. Multiple reports, multiple respected national voices have already circled Gabriel's name among Cleveland's most likely trade candidates before the season has even kicked off. In fact, one deeper breakdown identified 3 separate players who could realistically be on the move before final roster cuts, and Gabriel wasn't standing alone on that list. The first name mentioned right beside him was wide receiver Cedric Tillman. A year ago, Tillman walked into camp with legitimate hope of becoming the true number 1 target in that passing offense. But the room around him has shifted since then. After Cleveland spent a 2nd-round pick on Denzel Boston to become the new primary outside weapon, Tillman's role has shrunk considerably. He's heading into the final year of his rookie deal, and while the front office could keep him around as a rotational receiver, the injuries and inconsistency that have trailed him haven't made him irreplaceable. If a team comes calling with a fair offer, this is the kind of trade that could genuinely help both sides. The second name, unsurprisingly, was Gabriel. The reasoning mirrors almost exactly what we just broke down together. Watson holds the job on paper. Sanders is pushing him hard in a real, legitimate battle. Green sits behind them both as the long-term development project. Gabriel is simply the odd man out in a room that's gotten far too crowded for four names to coexist through final cuts. The third player mentioned was offensive tackle DeJuan Jones. There was a stretch not too long ago where a good chunk of this fan base genuinely believed Jones was destined to become a long-term fixture at tackle, but repeated injuries derailed that trajectory. He appeared in just 3 games last season, and now, with rookie Spencer Fano and veteran Titus Howard positioned as the projected starters, Jones finds himself buried behind not just those two, but also KT Leviston, who offers real positional versatility, plus rookie Austin Barber, also fighting for a roster spot. Jones enters the final year of his own rookie deal as well, and if a trade partner surfaces, Cleveland could reasonably be willing to listen. Personally, would it shock me to see Dillon Gabriel in a different uniform before Week 1 even arrives? Honestly, not really. And I want to be careful how I frame this, because I'm not writing this kid off as a bust or pretending he doesn't have a real NFL career waiting somewhere. Sometimes this business really does come down to fit, timing, and opportunity. Nothing more sinister than that. A crowded quarterback room in Cleveland doesn't automatically mean Gabriel can't go thrive somewhere else with a clearer, more open runway to snaps. But barring something dramatic shifting over the course of training camp, it's getting harder and harder to picture him surviving final roster cuts as anything more than a name we used to bring up in this quarterback conversation. Alright, let's completely shift gears, because I promised you the second half of this story would feel a lot better, and trust me, it absolutely does. Even after watching Myles Garrett walk out the door this offseason, a departure that honestly still stings every time I think about it, there's a growing belief across this league that Cleveland may already have its next defensive superstar sitting right there on the roster. And here's the part that might catch you off guard. It's not Jared Verse stepping into that spotlight. It's not Mason Graham, the highly touted first-round talent from a year ago either. The name generating all of this buzz belongs to linebacker Carson Schwesinger, and what people are saying about him right now is nothing short of extraordinary. In ESPN's annual league-wide survey, the one Jeremy Fowler compiles using input from scouts, coaches, and front office executives scattered across the entire league, Schwesinger got ranked as the third best off-ball linebacker in all of football. Let that actually sink in for a second. Third best in the entire league, after a single professional season on the field. But that ranking wasn't even the part that stopped me cold. One NFL personnel executive, someone whose entire career revolves around evaluating elite talent at the highest level, compared Schwesinger to Luke Kuechly reincarnated. Sit with how heavy that comparison actually is. Luke Kuechly isn't just some good linebacker from recent memory. He's a Hall of Famer, remembered as one of the most instinctive, cerebral, complete linebackers this league has ever produced, a guy whose film is still studied today because of how effortlessly he seemed to diagnose plays before they had even fully developed. For an executive to drop that name in the same breath as a rookie isn't casual praise. That's a statement engineered to turn heads across the league, and it worked. When you actually go back and study what Schwesinger put on tape during his rookie season, that comparison starts feeling a lot less like exaggeration and a lot more like genuine foresight. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year, and honestly, the way he earned that award basically tells the whole story on its own. Across 16 games, he racked up 156 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 9 quarterback hits, 3 passes defended. That is not a stat line you typically see out of a first-year linebacker. That's the kind of production teams spend years trying to develop in a player, assuming they're even lucky enough to get there at all. Jeremy Fowler pointed out something else in his reporting that really puts this whole thing into perspective. Only 2 other players across the entire league finished last season with at least 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 10 tackles for loss. Those 2 names? TJ Watt and Leo Togiatu. Both elite edge rushers whose entire job description revolves around living in the backfield and getting after the quarterback. Schwesinger matched that level of disruption while playing off-ball linebacker, a position that typically demands far more coverage responsibility and far less direct involvement in the pass rush. That distinction is exactly what makes his rookie season feel so remarkable. He wasn't just productive. He was productive in a way that historically belongs to a completely different position group altogether. And that's precisely why the conversation around him has started shifting so dramatically. People across this league have stopped calling him a promising young piece. They're starting to view him as a legitimate centerpiece, the kind of player capable of anchoring an entire defense all on his own. And considering everything Cleveland just lost when Garrett walked out that door, the timing of all this feels almost poetic in a strange way. Because, let's be honest with each other for a second, you don't simply replace a player like Myles Garrett. Superstars on that level aren't interchangeable parts you swap out and expect business as usual the following Sunday. What you can do, though, is build something new, a different identity, a different flavor of dominance. And if Schwesinger keeps developing anywhere near the trajectory he flashed as a rookie, Cleveland might already have exactly what it needs to build that next identity around: a young, instinctive, ferociously productive linebacker who profiles as an honest-to-God franchise cornerstone for years to come. So here's where all of this leaves us as training camp inches closer. One storyline forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth: that difficult roster decisions still lie ahead at a position as critical as quarterback. The other reminds us why hope still lives inside this Browns building, why there's genuine excitement bubbling underneath everything else swirling around this franchise right now. Whether Gabriel ends up staying in Cleveland or gets shipped off somewhere else before Week 1, this front office has to make whatever call benefits the franchise's long-term outlook, even if that decision stings for a young player who never really did anything wrong. And if Schwesinger keeps playing anywhere close to the level he flashed as a rookie, Cleveland may already be sitting on one of this league's next truly elite defensive stars, someone capable of leading that defense for years, long after all the noise around this current quarterback situation fades into the background. Two completely different stories, two completely different emotions, but both of them, in their own way, are shaping exactly what direction this Browns franchise is heading as the calendar keeps inching toward kickoff.